Kirsty, could you say something just quickly?
Thank you, Jeremy. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest in our series of leadership masterclasses. My name is Kirsty Maxey. I'm the chair of the IoD City Financial Services Interest Group and CEO of Team Spirit. Tonight, we're really looking forward to hearing from His Royal Highness, Prince Khalid bin Bandar Al Saud. But before we meet him, let me tell you a little bit about the Institute of Directors. Here we believe that better directors make better businesses, and for just £35 per month, membership provides you with a whole range of useful business tools, from networking to tax and legal advice and professional training. And now we have access to a whole range of meeting places and lounges too. This event is part of the IoD Business Extra webinar series, which is providing insight and added value for our members. And our next event is on Thursday evening in partnership with the ESOP Centre. And that's looking at how businesses can provide a stronger relationship with their employees through shared ownership. On the next slide, you can see the agenda for the evening, which focuses on the interview. And there are two ways that you can get involved at the bottom of your screen. Firstly, you'll see the chat button. Please do use this to share with us where you're dialing from, which part of the country, or if you're dialing in internationally, and which company you're dialing in from. You can do that and share that with every one of the attendees, and then you can connect with them. But if you want to ask questions, there's a Q&A button, so please do use that for any questions that you would like to put forward. The great thing about the Q&A is that you can upvote questions that you like and want to see answered. And finally, just to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. Now I'd like to introduce you to our interviewer for the Leadership Masterclass series. That's the chair of the London IoD, Alastair King. Alastair, over to you.
Thank you, Kirsty. What a great pleasure. Lovely to be here tonight. And thank you very much indeed to our audience for joining us this evening. I'm delighted to be interviewing today His Royal Highness Prince Khalid bin Bandar Al Saud, the Saudi Arabian Ambassador to the United Kingdom. Your Royal Highness, can you hear us? Oh.
I can. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Your Royal Highness, I think the most popular question that I could possibly ask you today is, could you please import some Saudi Arabian sunshine into our freezing cold spring? But instead of asking that impossible question, I'm going to ask you to say a little bit about yourself, sir, and perhaps a little bit about your career and how you came to become the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the United Kingdom.
Sure. Alastair, thank you very much for having me at this event. It is an honor to be able to speak to you and I'm sure your many distinguished guests. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I'll be as brief as I can about myself, which is quite easy. I went to school and university here, but also in the United States. My father is a diplomat, so I spent a lot of time traveling as a young child and later young man. University here. After that, I ended up working at the UN for a year in the political world for the UN, not the Saudi mission. From there, moved on to continue to work in politics. I worked with my father at the embassy in Washington for a few years. Made an attempt to get a master's degree thereafter. And surprisingly to some, I actually then went into the private business and opened a company in Saudi Arabia, which was basically an investment firm, somewhere between private equity and venture capitalism. We set up a number of companies, usually in joint venture with partners from around the world, trying to bring FDI into Saudi Arabia. Did that for about 15 years. When I got a call one day in 2018, and I was informed that His Majesty wanted me to be our ambassador to Germany, which I duly did for a year, and I was incredibly honored to do so. And from there, I was sent here to the UK about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So that's basically how I ended up here.
Excellent, fantastic. So could you give your views on the current state of the Saudi economy at this time? Where do you see the opportunities and the threats at the moment? And perhaps you could comment, sir, on how resilient the Saudi economy has been to the pandemic.
Sure. Well, I think the whole world has been in a very similar state of uncertainty. The last year has been very difficult for any, not just government, but any company, any individual really, to plan anything. And we're still somewhat stuck in that rather complicated, difficult scenario and situation. The Saudi economy, like many other countries around the world, we had a fairly large setback. I think our GDP fell about 4% last year. We're seeing a recovery underway. We had a very strange and rather unique boost to our economy in some respects with the restrictions on travel that were in place. We have quite a lot of outbound tourism during the summers when the weather is quite difficult in Saudi Arabia. And a lot of that stayed local and was spent locally, and it gave the opportunity for a lot of local businesses to develop, particularly in the retail, restaurant, hotel market. But we're forecasting, depending on who you ask, anywhere between 2% and 4% growth in the coming year. Hopefully that'll increase more. But we took a lot of hits in a row, just even before COVID, with low oil prices and the collapse of the oil market, with the production quotas we've agreed to in OPEC plus. So it's been a tough time for the Saudi economy, but luckily for us, we had already begun taking a lot of steps and measures against a big hit to our economy, which is a rentier petroleum hydrocarbon-based economy. So we had begun some of the reform process ahead of time, which meant we were well in the swing of it rather than reacting to it. And I think that set us up quite well for the coming years.
And so you mentioned the non-hydrocarbon economy. We often think about, we've heard a lot about the way that Saudi Arabia has sought to diversify itself. How is that process going? And how well are the non-hydrocarbon related businesses thriving at this time?
We're still at the beginning of this journey. The process began, as I'm sure many of your guests know, with our Vision 2030 program, which, before I get directly onto it, the one thing that a lot of people often overlook about Vision 2030 is the heart of Vision 2030 is essentially the human being and what improves the human being's life in Saudi Arabia. And so it covers everything from social, cultural, legal, as well as economy and investment, etc. So it's a very, very broad aim. And what we realized when we looked at our economy is that if we relied solely on the hydrocarbon economy, we weren't going to have much of an economy for very long. And so we needed to look at what we needed to do to begin to transform that. And so we could provide for a very fast growing and young population. I'm 43, I'm older than 80% of the country. And the amount of jobs we have to create, the opportunities we have to create, not just when you look at it in terms of Saudi Arabia as a individual country, but when you look at it in terms of our region, which is a very complicated region to be doing anything in, let alone transforming yourself. So one of the main things we want to do is move away from hydrocarbons. And luckily for us, in some respect, fortune is a wonderful thing to have on your side. There were a number of industries that were not developed at all in Saudi Arabia, tourism being one of them. The principal one we've moved into, entertainment, which we could leverage and benefit from the growth of by creating jobs and opportunities, investment opportunities, and otherwise. And that's where we focused initially. But there's also a tremendous amount to be done in the energy market outside of hydrocarbons, solar energy, renewables, green hydrogen. And we're doing a huge amount in that space as well. Initially bolstered by oil and gas to kick off the process and to aid and help it. But the environment is at the center of what we're trying to do in Vision 2030 and where we want to take the country in the future, because essentially that's what improving human lives needs. We'll all hit a wall pretty fast if we don't start looking at these issues.
Thank you. What role do UK businesses play in that diversification and away from hydrocarbons? And do you see that cooperation between the UK and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia developing? And can you see that rate of growth perhaps increasing?
Definitely. We need a lot of help in order to get to where we want to. It's not something we can do on our own. And luckily, there are synergies between our two countries and where we want to take things. There are synergies in terms of two countries embarking on a new journey at the same time, with Brexit here in the UK and Vision 2030 in Saudi. And those scenarios mean we both need partners, and we're both looking for partners at a national level as much as on an individual level in both the private and public sectors. And I think that's a very useful joint place to be, if you like. Also, the UK is one of our oldest allies. A lot of Saudis spend time here socially as well as on business trips. We've an estimated $90 billion worth of investment into the UK from Saudi Arabia, mainly from the private sector. So there are some good places to begin with. A lot of, we have currently about 11,000 students here, and that's post-COVID, and that's down a little bit from where we were just before, but I imagine that'll come up again. So there's a lot of people who've come through the system, me being one of them, that produces a great deal of understanding. So there are opportunities just on a basic level, but also the industries that we want to move into, I think, are well represented here in the UK. Fintech, renewable energy. We've all heard the Prime Minister's comments about being to wind what Saudi Arabia is to oil. And I think he's got some competition, because we want to be to wind what we are to oil. But I think within that means there's plenty of opportunity to work together. And hydrogen is another really interesting developing technology, which for us to succeed in developing, we're going to need other people to be part of the process. So the opportunities are there. It doesn't take much to look for them. Just overcoming the fear of the unknown, I suppose, in one respect.
Thank you. So you mentioned the Vision 2030. We've heard about that for some years now. So are you pleased with the progress of the vision? Also, did the pandemic, slow the vision, or did it refine it in some ways? And I suppose, what sort of further steps do you need to be undertaken in future years?
There's no question the pandemic has hit everything and slowed everything down. There are a few industries that have managed to accelerate in this period, but not a huge amount. That said, I'm incredibly pleased where we've got to. We're hitting the 5-year anniversary of Vision 2030. And there have been some really positive surprises where we've exceeded our expectations and our plans. One easy one to pick out is women's employment. We went from roughly 19% of women in the labor force 5 years ago to 33% now. And our target for 2030 was 30%. So we've surpassed that and hoping to increase that as we go. We've also, I mean, just to address a very important issue, which a lot of people, again, overlook, is the vision is a broad vision. The method with which we carry it out is constantly being reassessed and readjusted and improved. Where we hit targets, we push them further, and where we realize there are complications, we pull them back. And you can only predict so much, but we've set incredibly high ambitions, and I'm pleased with where we've got to, but not pleased because you'd always like to do it faster and better. But it is remarkable, and we've had a positive achievements. I mean, across the board, the digitization of our economy is remarkable. What's happened? We have online government apps where you have access to over 260 different services that government provides, from licensing to passport renewal to, I mean, everything you can possibly imagine. And the speed with which this makes interaction with governments is remarkable. Entertainment, we've had over 2,000 live events in Saudi Arabia in the last 5 years. And this is coming from a country where I don't think in my life before that there were 2,000 events in Saudi Arabia. So it's dramatic. And laws, we've changed, reformed over 100 laws in Saudi Arabia. And we have on the books changes for another 200. And we're aiming at the quality of these things, which is what people ask me, well, why haven't you done it already? It takes time to do these things, and it's not so easy. And these laws affect everything from culture, society, investment, economy, all of the above. But within that, it's created a lot of opportunities for people to benefit from, both in Saudi and abroad.
One of the most eye-catching elements of the development plans for the kingdom is that of the is that for NEOM, and that's a utterly remarkable project. I wonder, sir, if you wouldn't mind saying a little bit about NEOM for those who haven't come across it, and also just to mention, it is described on its website as an accelerator of human progress, which is a wonderful expression. And perhaps you could just say a little bit about how the NEOM project is going to contribute to human progress.
Sure. It's one of these areas where, again, we have a unique opportunity in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a vast country with a lot of empty spaces. We have been blessed with a significant amount of wealth. Now, obviously, the last few years economically have been difficult, but we're a wealthy country. And we've decided to, everyone, you look at London and think of all the things you'd like to do to London to improve it. You're limited by physical infrastructure. You're limited by the cost of doing things. You're limited by what you have to remove to create. And to be able to designate quite a significant, I mean, the area of NEOM is about the size of Belgium. One thing I would say is it's not a city. It is a wider development, and more than anything, it's a culture. So what we've done is said what things are most important and relevant to development in the near future and in the long-term future, and that is renewable energy, the green initiative. It is AI and technology. It is improvement of how people live on a day-to-day basis in terms of food and access to water and jobs, employment, etc. And it's a quality of life, entertainment, ease of access to things, ease of movement. All of these things we're trying to bring together in NEOM and use technology to improve people's lives. Use technology to improve the environment, use technology to make people happy, essentially. So AI, technology, this is at the core of what we're trying to develop. Now, I will say that NEOM is again, quite in an early stage of where it wants to go. And we've got to put in some of the basic infrastructure, which is what we're doing at the moment. We are talking to our partners around the world, both in government and in the private sector, and sort of challenging people to say, you know what, come, and no matter how crazy your idea may be, convince us it's doable and we'll give it a shot. And I think that has really been what is at the core of Vision 2030 and the Crown Prince's aims for where he wants to take the country is, let's not limit ourselves by what we can't do, but let's aim for what we, let's not limit ourselves by what we can do, but let's aim for what people think we can't, but is actually achievable. The art of making the impossible possible is what we're trying to do. And, it may be ambitious, overly ambitious, but we're going to give it a very good shot, and we hope other people will come on that journey with us.
And so it would almost be a petri dish, if you like, for how AI would work in a society. Those are the sorts of ideas behind how you do this. Absolutely.
We want to try new things. We want to give things a shot. And, we're not limited by saying, well, this hasn't worked. Well, if it doesn't work, stop it and try something better. And I think it's a real can-do mentality that is developing, which is aided by having such a young population who, young people have an amazing ability to always be optimistic and look forward to trying something new. And so I think it just fits with where we are as a country.
Just slightly moving on from that, I mean, I do find NEOM astonishing as a prospect. But I'd like to try and work out how can UK companies benefit from Vision 2030 and some of the other projects that the Kingdom is undertaking, and particularly which sectors do you think are the best opportunities for UK businesses to have a go at Saudi Arabia?
Sure. The obvious ones are obviously retail. It's a retail society. It's a retail world that we're living in. But you look at the new industries that we're developing in particular, which is hospitality and tourism. Those are huge markets. And what is involved with that and the sort of next follow-on stage, which is entertainment and sports. Those are 4 sectors that we are significantly trying to develop in Saudi. And there's a lot of room for that development. I'm sure a lot of you will have heard and seen sporting events that we've held in the last year, 2 years. Some that are coming with Formula 1, boxing, golf, concerts. Tremendous things across the board. There's been a flourishing of cultural growth in Saudi, from art to the arts in general. The introduction of cinema and film. These are all amazing industries, which the UK is quite strong in. And those are sort of no-brainers. And there's a lot to be done. But there's also a tremendous amount otherwise. Manufacturing and industry. The government has a huge push to develop our industrial base and our manufacturing. But in order to do it in a way that is sustainable for the future, we've got our SIDF, which is our Industrial Development Fund, and our what is called the NIDLP, which is our National Industrial Development and Logistics Program. Financing or creating opportunities for finance and providing logistics and licensing for manufacturing and industrial development in a green, sustainable way is a huge opportunity to do things better. Where we are in the world today, and I'm sure we'll touch on COP26 later, but I think this is also where there's an opportunity for Britain and Saudi Arabia is Britain became great through the Industrial Revolution. We are on the cusp and on the verge of a second the first Industrial Revolution got us into the environmental mess we're in. It'll be a second green industrial revolution that gets us out of it. And we really, really, really believe that in Saudi Arabia. So it's setting up a whole new way of doing things. And again, we cannot do that on our own. We need partners, and not just through technical skills, etc., but also in terms of challenging each other. And I think that's always a healthy thing. So as we move forward, we will be looking more and more for people or countries and foreigners to get involved. And we've made dramatic changes to our legal system to allow for that in terms of licensing and ownership rules, bankruptcy rules, all sorts of things. Our markets have been rejigged so that they are now accepted worldwide. I mean, there's been a tremendous amount that's been done on a basic level to encourage that. And I think in the next 2-3 years, as we come out of COVID, we'll see some greater partnership. But there's already a huge amount. I mean, there are over 200 joint ventures in Saudi Arabia with British companies. I think there's about 20,000 directly employed workers in Saudi who are British. I mean, it's incredible, and there's only more. The Crown Prince said it recently in a meeting I was in with a government official here. He said, it's not about business as usual between Saudi and Britain. It's about bigger and better. And I think that's where we want to go.
And if a small or medium-sized British company wanted to make a commitment to doing business in Saudi Arabia, are there some government agencies that within the Saudi government that they can apply to, and where can they find those details?
Sure. The Ministry of Investment is responsible for managing the process of investment in and out of Saudi. They have here in London, and they've set up an office in the last year. Obviously, the last year has been a difficult one, called Invest Saudi, with a full-time staff member here, and they're increasing the number of people once we can get to a stage where we can. Their job is to inform, educate, and to highlight the opportunities in Saudi Arabia. And so any business that is looking at investing in Saudi can have a conversation with them, and they'll find the information that you need. They'll answer the questions that you have, and they'll direct you to where you need to go to get things done. I mean, obviously, in addition to that, the embassy stands ready, willing and able to help anyone who wants to get in touch with us directly. But we work closely with the Ministry of Investment. We're going to be launching some more opportunities in the coming months, assuming things become easier. But the Ministry of Investment is our sort of principal target area for foreign companies looking to come into Saudi.
And are you aware, sir, of small and medium-sized British companies having success in Saudi Arabia? It's not just a preserve for the big companies. Is that correct?
No, it's definitely not. There are a myriad of British companies, both small and doing all sorts of things, and it's moving beyond the phase of just providing goods or shipping stuff to Saudi. Principally, the financial services are incredibly well represented in Saudi and well tied up with Saudi companies, but there are some really, really unique small opportunities. There's a company, it's called Solar, the name will come back to me, Solar Water, I think, which is just set up a rather really, really interesting desalination solar energy project in Saudi, using heat and sun to, et cetera. But there's lots of opportunities like that. And what you'll find when you go to Saudis, Saudis have an entrepreneurial nature deep inside them, but haven't had the opportunity to unleash it. And what we're doing with Vision 2030 is giving them that opportunity, but it's also creating opportunities for others who want to get involved. And our legal system now allows for fully owned foreign companies. I would always advise people to have a local friend at least to ask for advice. But we've become, you look at all of the world indices, whether it's World Bank, IMF, Saudi Arabia is moving up on competitiveness, on opportunities, on all sorts of these we're improving on, because we've seen that's what it takes to get people involved. And we're all about multilateralism.
I've been doing my research for this interview, sir. I do note that there's Saudi Arabia has very high ambitions for Hyperloop and some extraordinary sort of projections for those projects. Could you say a little bit about those ambitions, because I think the audience would find it fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's in line with looking at what is the situation in Saudi and what is required to improve things. It's an incredibly large country. I mean, it's the size of Western Europe, with a population of 30-ish million, 32 million. the major cities are very spread apart. If you drive out of any major city in the UK, unless you're in West Scotland, Northwest Scotland, you can drive no more than 5 minutes before you come across a village or a town or another city. In Saudi, you can drive 6 hours and not see a soul. I mean, you'd be lucky to see a petrol station. So it's a huge country, and we've always suffered from connectivity. Now, obviously, in the modern world with aircraft and trains, it's been beneficial, but they have a lot of negative effects. And to introduce a system of travel, not just for people, but for goods and services and all sorts of things, that is economically has economic benefits, that is environmentally friendly, and is fast. I mean, that's a dramatic change. Again, and without spending too much time delving into history, it's the effect of trains introduced in the Industrial Revolution. Trains, when they were introduced to India, you're connecting a huge amount of space and making life better for people. Speeding up speed is not always seen as a good thing, but I think in this case, speeding up people's ability to move and traverse the country is a huge opportunity. And we're really working. I mean, it's a perfect project for somewhere like Saudi, but then there are lots of perfect projects, and we just need people to bring them with them.
Understood. And perhaps a related point is that of digitization. Again, I think people have been have remarked about how digital the Saudi Arabian economy already is. Uber works within a minute or 30 seconds in Riyadh, and I just wondered whether are there any particular goals you have for digitization of the economy? Are there any sort of specific targets that you're seeking to meet?
Without question. I mean, we're hitting some of them. We are. One of the things that you have to look at when it comes to digitization, and we've gone, we started our move to electronic government about 15 years ago, and that started that process quite swiftly. Plus, we have a very well-connected country, and the uptake of mobile phones, internet access. I mean, we have internet access to about 3.5 million homes, which is significant. I think the average mobile phone per person is 2.5 or something ridiculous. So it's a very, very well-connected society across the age groups, not just in the young population. And so, you've got to start looking at what things you need in place. You need security, and it's a huge, huge opportunity to do more. And I think, we've done quite a lot already. In the global cybersecurity index in the G20, we're rated quite highly. We've got a lot more work to do there with everyone, but we're also, interestingly, we're looking at ways where we can bring the international community into the digital conversation and have a greater cooperation between countries of how we address these issues. I mean, we're seeing them all the time. How do you deal with the Facebooks and the Twitters of the world? Where does the regulation lie? How do you make sure that it's fair for everyone? How do you keep the opportunities open? These are all very serious issues that are difficult to discuss on your own. Even a country the size of the United States can't do it by itself. And so by taking initiative, we're talking to our partner countries around the world to try and create at least a forum for dialogue on these issues. So, it's a tough place to be thinking out because it's very, it's so new, but within that's where the opportunity is. And, I think probably a lot more younger people than me who are involved more in depth probably have better ideas, but I think it's definitely somewhere we're very interested in focusing on. And it fits in line with what we're doing in NEOM and Vision 2030 and making the world a smaller place.
Excellent. And you touched earlier, so on the on COP26, the conference in Glasgow, and in relation to actions countering climate change. I just wonder what actions has the Saudi government taken in relation to climate change, amelioration, etc.? And has it had the effect that they hope to see?
Well, we're still very early in the process of what we're doing. I think as everyone is, we're trying to shift our focus to doing things in a different way. But we've set out some lofty goals. We have done quite a lot. I mean, just in Saudi Arabia, which is not a country that's famed for its water, we've reforested large tracts of Saudi Arabia. We've planted about 14 million trees and plants in the last 4 or 5 years. So on the natural side, we've got 6 or 7 new nature reserves. We have a huge raft of new regulation on protecting coasts and coral reefs, replanting of mangroves, which are one of the greatest carbon sinks on Earth. And moving on to the sort of more practical stuff, we have spent huge amounts on our oil industry. It's probably the cleanest oil industry on Earth, which I mean may not be saying much, but is significant. We've invested quite a significant amount in that. We are investing heavily in the development of hydrogen. There's a very, very large investment in NEOM, which aims to be 100% green hydrogen. We have already worked on producing the blue and the gray hydrogen. We had a very big shipment of blue ammonia to Japan, which is a method of carrying hydrogen across the seas. It's still in its infancy and early stages, but unless we start doing these things, we're not going to develop the industry. So we're working hard on doing that. And most importantly, which is sort of the headline for us, is our carbon circular economy concept, which not surprisingly, because the G20 was in Saudi, but it's the first green environmental initiative ever endorsed by any G20 meeting. And maybe another time one can go in more detail about what it encapsulates, but I'm pretty sure that most of your viewers will be well versed in what it means, the carbon circular economy. But it's a fantastic thing, and these are all issues that we want to address and bring to light at COP. COP meetings in the past, and I've attended one, Saudi Arabia often unfairly is regarded as one of the bad guys of COP, because we protecting our national industry and our singular economy, with no one wanting to help us change what we're doing. So this is all about, well, it's not about us or you or anyone else. It's about how do we work together to improve everyone and what everyone's doing. And if you look at our launching of the Saudi Green Initiative and the Middle East Green Initiative, there's some huge things that we're trying to do, planting 15 billion trees, bringing down our carbon footprint. I mean, it's dramatic and it's wide ranging. And we just like people to get on board with us and do it. But we're very serious about these things. People say, oh, you're doing, this is all for PR. It's not at all. You're already seeing huge amounts of projects as far as renewable energy, cleaner ways of doing desalination. I mean, it's really remarkable what's happening on the ground. And I really look forward to the relaxing of travel restrictions so that people can come and see it for themselves in Saudi, because it's there and it's apparent.
Which brings me on, sir, to nicely onto another question, and that is, you touched on it earlier, that of tourism into Saudi Arabia. I do remember 2019, there was a big advertising campaign to persuade British people to visit Saudi Arabia. Obviously, that the pandemic has caused all sorts of problems on that front. But will there be further actions to attract more tourists to Saudi Arabia? And what sort of numbers are you expecting?
Well, we'd like tourism to account for 5% of our economy, which is not a small amount, considering if you compare it to the sort of well-trodden tourist destinations in the region. It's a significant development. But again, we're starting from a fairly low base where we didn't even have a tourism visa until recently. We had a brief attempt some years ago. But if you look at, we launched our tourist visa in September 2019. Between September and March, just as the COVID restrictions all came into play, we issued 440,000-ish tourist visas. And that's a significant amount for a country that didn't have much tourism before. And people often get our priorities the wrong way around. The principal reason we've done this is because it's a new industry and we want to create opportunities for Saudis. You can create new jobs, create a new economy, and help the country flourish. The side benefits of having people come and see the country are great. But it's not the principal reason we're doing these things. It's not about changing the way we are seen on the face of it. It's about changing the way we are. And I think that's a total misunderstanding of some of the motivations behind what we're doing. But it's serious, it's interesting, it's fantastic. I mean, it's opened up huge opportunities just for Saudis in their daily lives to see different places in their own country. And it's really nice to see. I mean, there are parts of Saudi, Madan Saleh, which is part of the Al Ula development in the northwest of Saudi, near Medina. I used to take friends there 15 years ago, and it was in the middle of nowhere, impossible to get to, and you'd walk around it as if you were Indiana Jones exploring an ancient site. Today, it's well organized. It is not overrun with people, so it's well controlled so that it's not damaged. It's environmentally and sustainably thought out. And it's a huge and incredible attraction to people. The whole region, not just any one particular site, because there are about 5 sites there to visit. So, there is a lot to do and there's a lot of opportunity. I'm sure many of you will have seen adverts on television. And I watch them and I'm astounded by what I see. And it's my country. It is really, really a remarkable opportunity for people. And I think once things open up again, we'll see people come back quite swiftly.
Excellent. And just before we go to our Q&A session, sir, I'd like to ask a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is many years ago when the UK was going through a very difficult patch, a pop singer released a song called Reasons to Be Cheerful Part 3, which is a great song. I just wondered, in these tough times, what are your reasons to be cheerful that perhaps are hidden from general view?
Well, I think I'm generally an optimist, and I'm a firm believer in something I learned when I did my military training, was if there's a problem, there's a solution, and if there's no solution, there's no problem. And within that, I find the solution creates an opportunity, and the opportunity should be something you look forward to and try and take advantage of. And there are a lot of problems now. And so we require quite a lot of solutions. And I think one thing that a lot of people that I speak to have, been impacted by COVID in many different ways, is they've realized they need to be working together more. And I think, and I hope that we move away from the individualistic spirit that often guides people and think more of a communal spirit, because we have to work together. These problems, many of them that we face, are their cross-border problems. What you do in one place is not going to fix it. Everyone needs to be working together, whether it's digitization of the economies, whether it's health pandemics, whether it's environment. All of these things require rather large and unified efforts. We don't have to agree on where we all go, but we do need to put in effort together. And I think, particularly as far as the United Kingdom and Saudi Arabia is concerned, our national positions put us in a place where we are looking for people to work with, and I think that creates a great opportunity for both countries.
Excellent. Well, so we'll move on to questions and answers. Thank you from the audience. I'm going to start with a question from Sarup, and he's asking a question in relation to gender parity. He's saying that the Saudi is becoming more aware and more focused on gender parity, including allowing female drivers and encouraging more female executives. And I think he's saying, what sort of, both internally and externally, what steps can Saudi take in order to promote those activities?
not just what we can take, what we have been taking. Creating opportunities is not just about regulation. It's not just about what laws exist. It's about changing a mindset and changing a way people think. I remember reading a poll that was done in 2006, 7 maybe, about women driving in Saudi, amongst the Saudi population. And the question was a very simple, direct one. Should women be allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia? And the split was 40-60, 40% against and 60% for. And I mean, it was less than 1% that was undecided. It was a very, very stark gap. Now, what was particularly interesting was the numbers were roughly the same, men and women. So just as many women didn't think women should be driving as men. And part of the reason, when you delve into those numbers, the 40% who were against, it's not on a religious grounds or necessarily totally cultural grounds, but it's about the fear of the unknown and what happens if, and what do you have to change if it happens? What are the negative consequences? Are we ready for it? A lot of these side questions that people have to think about. And once it happens and people turn around and realize the world hasn't collapsed and we're still functioning, we haven't lost our morals, we haven't lost our culture, we haven't lost who we are, it suddenly becomes easier to do the next change, and it becomes easier to open up the next thing that has not been normal for forever. And so once that first step was taken, I mean, it's remarkable what's been done since. Women now allowed to join the army, women in the police. I mean, there are women's guards in the royal palace. This is something that was unthinkable 6, 7, 8 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. And it's really fantastic to see. We have our first ambassador, without being nepotistic, was my sister in Washington. We've now got another 2 ambassadors appointed here in Europe. We've got deputy ministers. It's really remarkable. We have a lot of incredible CEOs, and actually something that's been overlooked. There have been a lot of women in the private sector who own their own companies and run them for quite a long time, albeit quietly. But the industry has grown, and the entrepreneurial spirit in our young and older ladies in Saudi has been remarkable. And if you're going to remove from an economy basically half your population, you're losing a lot of economic power. Women are already well represented in education. 55%, 58% of our graduates are women. So there's a lot of knowledge there to spend in the right place. And we're now giving them the opportunity to make the choice where they want to spend it, which I think is a great thing.
Thank you. And so we've got a large number of questions to try to get through, and we've got 10 minutes left or so. So I'd be grateful for your responses. Let's see how many we can get through. I've got a question from Hima, who is saying Saudi Arabia has taken a lead role in supporting African countries recovering from the effects of COVID-19. Which sectors do the Saudi Arabian government hope these funds will be utilized to ensure the objectives are met?
It's a very good question, and unfortunately not one I have a great deal of specialty in, but the general question I can answer. It varies obviously from country to country and what the requirements are there, but I think the obvious one is in healthcare, and improving, whether it's hospital beds, access to vaccines, access to oxygen, access to treatments, etc. for COVID. But in many places, it's even more basic than that. It's access to water, it's access to food, it's access to a lot of things. In some cases, as we've seen in Sudan now, we're working on reducing national debt so that the debt repayments are less. So there are a lot of ways we can address aid, particularly into Africa, and it's for a very simple reason. If we can improve the daily situation of people in those countries, it improves the daily situation of our country. There's a semi-selfish element, but that semi-selfish element is important for everyone. We need to bring everyone up, because these problems are cross-border. And if you look at You look at the rise in crime or terrorism. All of this happens when economies are suffering and there are no jobs and there are no prospects and no economic prospects for people. They turn to negative things, which often make it easier for them to have an income. This is what we're trying to avoid because it improves everyone's life, not just regionally, but globally. Sure, the further away, the less it affects us, but it still does. And we see that as a guiding principle of the foundation of Saudi Arabia, is helping those that are around you. And that's what we try and do to the best of our ability.
So you mentioned a remarkable statistic earlier in relation to you at 43, you are older than 80% of the sort of population, which is an extraordinary stat. A question related to that from Nzube. Nzube is asking, are you able to share more about what the government is doing about youth engagement? And then perhaps also, is there a role that the Saudi Arabian diaspora plays in that youth engagement?
Oh, there definitely is. I mean, youth engagement's all about what we're trying to do. I mean, we have a very young government. Our Crown Prince is in his early 30s. He's got a lot of young ministers. I mean, there are some older ministers as well. You need some of that wisdom. I mean, the nature of life in Saudi now, it's so well connected. It is so social media based. It's engagement, whether it's youth engagement or otherwise, is something you can't get away from. I've seen a lot of use of some of the new social media tools for ministers, for instance, to engage with people in conversations in a much more casual way and to spread information, to learn what it is that is affecting people in their daily life. I mean, I remember, and this goes back less than 10 years, 7, 8 years ago, we started a project which became too unwieldy because it was too big. Every month, one minister was responsible for answering questions on Twitter. And that started great, but eventually they were flooded with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of questions and they just couldn't answer them all. But, you know, it's always been there. How do we reach out and engage? And that is, you know, it's part of our cultural system. So if you look back historically in Saudi, you have the family unit, the tribal unit, and each one filters information up through the unit until it gets to the head of the tribe or the local emir, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very open, interactive system. The king, the crown prince, traditionally, and still today, have open courts where people can go in and engage. But engagement of youth is incredibly important because if we don't know where they want to go and what it is that they need, we don't know what we need to do. And I think that's an incredibly important part of any political system. And it's future planning, and it's a mistake that a lot of political systems do make, sometimes, you know, willingly and sometimes unwillingly. But we're trying very hard to keep on top of that. Not so easy though.
I'm sure. So I'm going to try and squeeze 2 or 3 more questions in. A question from Jafar, who's asking: Saudi Arabia is a leading Arab and Muslim country. Given the changes in demography and also the deep divisions within the Arab world, what sort of a regional role do you anticipate Saudi Arabia playing?
Sorry, there was a gap there. What can you?
The changing demography and also deep divisions within the Arab world. What regional role do you see Saudi Arabia playing? Briefly, sir.
An incredibly important one. Not least the size of the Saudi economy means it's an important player in the region and in the world. That position also puts you in a place where you can talk in amongst wider field and be listened to. You know, we're part of the G20. We have the incredible honor to host 2 holy sites, Mecca and Medina, which means we have a lot of people from the Muslim world that come in through Saudi Arabia, and there's an opportunity there to listen, as well as to you know, we host the OIC, which is the Organization for Islamic Conference. So we can bring and mobilize quite a lot of people for dialogue, for discussion. And so it's an incredibly important regional role. And, you know, at a base minimum, we just like things to be a bit more stable in the region. And it's been a region that's suffered from instability for the longest time. There's no need to get into details of Middle Eastern political difficulties, but within that, and this is something again that is overlooked, the current Saudi political system has been constant for 100 years. And to survive that long in our region is quite difficult, particularly when you're one that is at the center of quite a lot of what's going on. And we have managed that process, and I believe we've managed it fairly well. It's not always been easy, and there have been a lot of difficulties along the way, but that stability counts for quite a lot, I think, in terms of wisdom that you gain in doing so, but also it's an example to what other people can do as well. And the progress we've made in Saudi, if you look at Saudi 100 years ago and today, and you can divide it however small bits you like, every 10 years, every 5 years, every 20 years, it's difficult to see a period where we haven't improved and developed positively. Sure, there have been hiccups along the way, but by and large, it's been a positive development, which I think is a unique thing.
So a couple more questions, and it's one from Tom. I'm fascinated to see the new announcement on the Suda development. It's a beautiful region and perception-changing geography. Can you please outline how the development fits in with Vision 2030?
Absolutely, in every single way. It is sustainable and green. It is providing job opportunities for the youth, providing investment opportunities in Saudi and from out, creating opportunities for Saudi nationals to see their own country, and creating opportunities for foreigners to come and partake in some of the beautiful sites we have and get to know us a bit better. But that applies domestically as well. There's a lot of Saudis who haven't traveled around Saudi, as is the case in many countries around the world. So highlighting and showing the attractive opportunities within your country also benefits your country as well, and brings countries together. We're in the process in Saudi Arabia, not only of building a state, which I think we've been fairly successful in, as evidenced by my last comment, by the length of our system survival, but building a nation is a much more difficult thing, particularly in our region where nations are new. There are some countries that have a tradition that goes back 4,000 years, and it's wonderful, and they're very lucky to have that. And sure, the idea of Arab exists for a long time, but it's a very ununified nation, the Arab world. And so trying to create that national identity is important. And the best way to do that without it becoming dangerous, because when you play with national identity, it can get very dangerous, is to show how different and varied our nation is as a whole, and how unified it is in the aim of bettering everyone in the country. And I think a lot of countries historically have suffered from a focus in one area, whether it's a capital or somewhere that draws everyone, rather than try and have that focus across the country, which is why you're seeing a Suda development, NEOM in the north, the Red Sea project. There's a huge cultural element of what we're doing in the Eastern Province, Giddiya and Riyadh, Jeddah Old Town. So there, all these projects we're trying to do across the country. But hopefully soon you'll be able to come and see us, Suda, and you can judge for yourself.
Lovely. And so just a very last quick question from Martin, who traveled around the Saudi Arabia in the 1970s. Are there particular plans to develop tourism in relation to the arts and culture within Saudi Arabia?
Absolutely. We're developing tourism in every possible sphere. We're trying to, enhance and create, whether it is in the film industry, having events where people can highlight the film industry, all sorts of art festivals that we've done. There's been some fantastic stuff done in Al-Ula near Madan Saleh, but also in Riyadh. Moving museums and working with, something I get involved in. As an ambassador, my job is not to enact things, it is to create the opportunities and link them. And we've created some good links between various institutions here and in Saudi. Our Minister of Culture is non-stop traveling the world to try and forge links in the cultural sphere, working with museums and opera houses and concert halls, not just to have a discussion, but to bring knowledge of how best to develop these things, but also to export some of our culture abroad and have people see what we have in Saudi Arabia. There was a fantastic exhibition that took Saudi artifacts around the world about 10 years ago. There was another one that went around the world to describe Hajj and the pilgrimage over many years and the history of Mecca and Medina. Some really, really incredible things. And Saudi Arabia hasn't been the center of civilization of the Middle East, but it's been right in the middle of right on the outskirts of that development. We've seen all sorts of civilizations come through our part of the world. And if you think about the great civilizations of the Middle East, whether it's Persian, Egyptian, Assyrian, Babylonian, even Greek, Roman, the one thing that they all have in common is they have all played a significant role in Arabia. Not always mixed with each other, but they've always played a very significant role in Arabia. And I think that's an important development as far as we're concerned. And it's brought quite a lot to us. We may be remote, but we're not removed.
Lovely. And on that note, Your Royal Highness, I'm going to bring the interview to an end. Could I thank you very much indeed, sir, for your time and for your excellent answers. I've enjoyed it very much indeed, and I'm sure the audience has as well. So thank you very much indeed, sir. I'm most grateful.
Thank you very, very much, Alastair, and thanks to everyone for listening. And hope to see you soon.
Okay, see you soon. Thanks very much indeed. Just before you go, just a few things just to talk about. We've got an excellent event coming up on Thursday, the 27th of May, at 6 o'clock, which is Building Back Better through employees' share ownership schemes. So please join us at 6 o'clock in relation to that. And then on the 2nd of June, I have the great pleasure to be interviewing Alastair Campbell, leading mental health campaigner and former advisor to Tony Blair. Just a little bit more about the rest of our programs. You see, we've got coming up William Sitwell on the 7th of June, about talking about the reopening of the hospitality industry. And then 21st of June, I'm interviewing Lisa Nandy. So looking forward to that very much indeed. Just lastly, just a little bit about the IoD itself. Remarkable bargain to membership. There are some extraordinary membership benefits available to you. Go onto the IoD.com website. There you see details of the legal and tax helpline, which is worth the membership in itself. But professional development programs, plus also the possibility of courses, plus qualifications and everything. It's a remarkable organization, and I think you should explore the website and see what we've got. And if it's of interest, please join. Lovely stuff. Great to see you all. I've enjoyed it this evening. It's been, I think, a remarkable evening listening to what His Royal Highness had to say. I'd like to thank His Royal Highness for being involved with us tonight. I'd like to thank the IoD team of Jeremy and Kirsty in relation to their logistical support, plus also Manuel and Sophia for helping to put on this event. But most of all, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for joining us tonight. 1 or 2 minutes past 7. Hope you don't mind we overran very slightly. Lovely to see you all, and good night. Thank you.